right, today we're going to be talking about section 3.6. Again, we are solving equations. And this time we are doing, that's 3.5, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page in my book. By multiplying and dividing decimals. Okay, so we're going to, instead of adding and subtracting decimals, now we're multiplying and dividing. So let's do a quick review. Number 1, if we have 3x equals 15, I don't know if I've said this in a video before, but the equal sign is like our barrier. We can't cross it unless we do the same thing on both sides. So now I have to look up which side of my wall has the variable on it, or the x or the y or the c, some kind of a variable. I see it is this side. So now I know I have to divide both sides by 3 because right now I'm doing 3 times x and I need to get rid of that 3. So I need to divide by 3 from both sides. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so on the left side I get x equals 15 divided by 3 is 5, x equals 5, and that is my answer. Again, I can always go back and check my answer. 3 times 5, because x equals 5, equals 15, and 15 equals 15, and that checks out. So that's always a good way to check your answer, is just by going back and plugging that number into your original equation, and they should equal each other on both sides. All right, number 2, 12 equals x divided by 6. Okay, x divided by 6. Again, here's my barrier. I have to look on which side has the variable. This time it's the right side. So that means I need to times by 6 to both sides. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So on the right side I would be left with just x equals 6 times 12. Let's figure that out. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 more is 7. So that answer is 72. Boom, there we go. Now again, I can always go back and plug my answer into my original equation, which is 12 equals x, except for instead of x, I'm going to put 72 divided by 6. What is 72 divided by 6? Oops, sorry, 6, not 2. 6 goes into 7 one time, minus 6, I'm left with 1 over. 6 goes into 12 two times, so I get 12 equals 12, and my answer checks out. Okay. If you are ever not sure what you're doing, always go back and make sure to check your answer to make sure that makes sense. And again, I've said this a million times, this is your work right here. If you want to get full credit, this has to be on your sheet. Somewhere on showing me your work. You have to show me what you're dividing both sides of the equal side by. All right, now let's do a couple problems together. All right, first one we're going to do is, your direction will say solve. And the first one is 9/10 x equals negative 5 and 4/10. Okay, these are going to be a little bit trickier now, you guys. We really have to take our time and really think back to how do we divide decimals correctly, because it will be really easy for us to make just a silly little mistake and get the answer wrong. So please take your time on these. So right now, here's my barrier. I can't cross that unless I do the same thing to both sides. Okay, so right now I have 9/10 x. 9/10 times x. So that means I need to divide by 9/10, divide by 9/10 to both sides. 9/10 divided by 9/10 is 1, so I'm left with x equals negative 5 and 4/10 divided by 0 and 9/10. How do we divide decimals? Remember, our number on the outside cannot have a decimal point. So we have to move this over 1. So if I move the outside over 1, I need to move the inside over 1. And now all I'm doing is 9 divided by negative 54. Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. Negative 54 divided by 9. Okay, how many times can 9 go into negative 54? Well, I know that 9 times 6 is 54. So bring that negative up, because if we have one negative and we're dividing, our answer is going to be negative. It's when we have two negatives, when we're multiplying or dividing, that our answer becomes positive. So 9 times negative 54 is 6. Negative 6. So our answer right here is negative 6. Again, I can plug that back into my original equation. 0 and 9/10 times negative 6 equals negative 5 and 4/10. Okay, so if I do 9/10 times 0 and 9/10 times 6, and we know our answer is going to be negative. 6 times 9 is 54. 6 times 0 is 0. Plus 5 is 5. Okay, then I know I need to bring my decimal point back one spot. And there we go. I get negative 5 and 4/10 equals negative 5 and 4/10. So my answer checks out. Let's try another one. All right, number 2 that we're going to do says 1 and 15/100 equals 2 and 3/10 x. All right, so again, here's my divider. There is my barrier. I cannot cross over unless I'm doing the same thing to both sides. That's my first step, is to realize that. My second step is I need to see which side of our barrier or wall has the variable. I see this time it is on this side, on the right side. So right now it says 2 and 3/10 times x, so that means I need to divide both sides by 2 and 3/10. All right, so now this is where it gets tricky. On the right side, I'm left with x. That's easy peasy. But on the left side, I have to do 1 and 15/100 divided by 2 and 3/10. Okay, again, I can't have any decimals on the outside of my dividing sign, so I have to move that over one spot. So I have to move that over one spot. So now what I have is 11 and 5/10 divided by 23. Okie dokie. Now this is where it gets tricky. Let's bring up our decimal point so we don't forget it. 23 doesn't go into 11, so we have 0 on the outside. So now I have to say, how many times does 23 go into 115? What I'm going to do is I'm going to try 5. Let's see 5. 23 times 5. 5 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 more is 11. Yes, we got it. So it is 5 times. 23 goes into 115 5 times. So our answer is 5/10, or half. Okay, so now let's go back and check that out. 1 and 15/100 equals 2 and 3/10 times 5/10. Okay, so let's say 2 and 3/10 times 5/10. 2 times 3 is 15. 10 plus 1 more is 11. I have to bring my spot back 2 times. So I'm left with 1 and 15/100 equals 1 and 15/100. Okay, when I did that faster, it really took me like 2 seconds to go back and check my work to make sure I did it right. It's it seems like it's going to take a long time because I try to go through these videos slow so that you can have time to write down. You can have time, I can show you what I'm thinking when I'm doing these. But if you are doing it yourself, it can go by really quick when we check it out. Does that check out? Yes, it does. Here's our answer right here. It goes really fast. So just go back and check all of your answers, because then you can know you did it right, and you don't have to come back and ask Mrs. Hamer, did I do this right? Not that that's not a good thing. I do really enjoy when you come back and ask me that, because it shows me that you want to be doing it right the first time. But just really, this helps a lot when you go back and check your work. All right, let's try a couple more. All right, so for number 4, we are going to do x divided by negative 6 and 1/10 equals 5/10. So my first move is I need to remember that this is a barrier. I have to decide which side I'm going to do it on, and I know it's going to be the left side. So I need to times both sides by negative 6 and 1/10. Don't forget the negative sign. Times it by negative 6 and 1/10. Again, do not forget that negative sign. Okay, so now what I need to do is I get x equals on the left side, and then I need to do my computation of the right side, which is 5/10 times negative 6 1/10. 5 times 1 is 5. Don't forget your negative sign. 5 times 1 is 5, so I'm going to bring my 5 down there. Then I need to do 1 times 0, which is 0. So I'm just going to bring down my 0. 6 times 5 is 30, so I get 305 for my answer. And then I need to bring back my decimal point 2 spots because I have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal point in my original equation. So my answer is negative 3 5/10. So now I need to go back to my original equation to try and solve it. So I'm going to do negative 3 5/500, and I'm going to divide that by negative 6 1/10. So a negative divided by a negative is going to be a positive, so I know my answer is going to be a positive. So what I need to do is say how many times can 61 go into 30 5/10. I'm going to guess it's going to be somewhere around 5. Let's try it out. Yes, 61 times 5/10. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 6 is 30. Bring my decimal point back 1. And yes, I get 0 5/10. So on both sides, I'm going to get 0 5/10 equals 0 5/10. My answer checks out. I'm putting my box around my answer. Okay, the last one we're going to do, number 4, is negative 80 equals m divided by 4.5. Okay, so again, here's my barrier. I know I have m divided by 4.5 on the right side, or 4 5/10. So I need to multiply both sides by 4 5/10. Okay, so if I have negative 80 times 4 5/10, 5 times 0 is 0, 5 times 8 is 40. Add my 0. 4 times 0 is 0. 4 times 8 is 32. So what I'm going to get is 0, 0, 6, 3. Bring my decimal point back 1. Bring my negative sign down. So I have negative 360 equals m. So if I check out, here's my answer, put a box around it. If I check that out, I go back into my original equation. Negative 80 equals m, not m, because we're plugging in negative 360 divided by 4 5/10. Okay, so let's do 360 divided by 4 5/10. Move it over 1. Move it over 1. Have to add my 0. Don't forget that little part. Okay, so 45. Here, I'm going to erase these so we don't get confused here. So now we get 45 divided by 3,600. I'm going to guess that 45 times 8 is going to get me to that 360 number. So 5 times 8 is 40. 32 plus 4 more is 36. Yes, it is. Minus 360, left with 0. Bring down my 0. And, this is a negative. 336, negative 3, yes, sorry. So now my answer, I get negative 80 equals negative 80. Checks out. All right, I want to do one quick word problem here. We need to write an equation and solve. Okie dokie. So here's what our problem says. A player at bat 15 times, has an average of 0 133 thousandths I don't know how we're supposed to say that in batting terms. I'm sure some of you boys will know that. How many hits did they have? So we have to figure out. This is kind of like the percentage that they hit correctly, and this is how many times they hit. So what we have to do is we know our batting average. Equals hits, how many times we hit the ball, divided by times at bat. So here's what we know. We know this is our batting average. We know this is how many times they hit at bat, and we want to know how many did they hit. So this is kind of like 3.4 that we've been working on. We need to know how many times did they hit the ball. So let's plug it in. This one we have to write an equation. So we know the average is number of hits over the times at bat. So now we just have to plug in our information. I'm going to move all this stuff up here quick. And I'm just going to go about that high, I think, because I don't want to get rid of my information. So batting average. Boom, here it is. 0 and 133 thousandths equals how many times we hit. Do we know how many times they hit? No, because we need to figure out how many hits did they have. So we're going to just do hit over times at bat 15. Okay, now how do we solve this? I'll give you a hint. Hits divided by 15 is the side that our variable is. Our variable is we don't know how many times they hit. So if I multiply by 15 on both sides, then I can get hits by itself, and then I will know how many times they hit the ball. Okay, so 15 divided by 15, I'm left with hits. How many hits did they have? Now I need to do 0 and 133 thousandths times that by 15. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1 more is 16. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1 more is 6. Done. Add my 0. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. Bring it down. 5. 6 plus 3, 9, 9, 1. Then I need to bring it back 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So what I'm getting is 1 and 995 thousandths. So out of 15 times that he hit the ball, he only hit it about 2 times, which is, in my opinion, not very good. Maybe in a baseball player's that's pretty good, but I think in 15 chances of hitting the ball, I think you'll be able to hit it more than about 2 times, because we can't hit a ball 9/900ths of a time. All right, again a reminder. All right, there is a quiz after this section. That is the time where all of your corrected homework is due. So make sure that if you have any corrections to hand in, they're handed in to me before the quiz. If you have any questions, come and ask them, because I need to make sure that you're doing well on these quizzes. These quizzes are worth a lot more than your homework, so it's very important you know what you're talking about. Thank you for watching.